of the novices, who had gone down to fetch wine, was the first to notice a movement under the altar. At first, he thought it was the air a draft stirring up dust. Then he thought it was a shadow. Only when the rotten cassock stirred and rats slipped out from under the folds, covered in greasy church wax, did he realize that a body was moving. A quarter of an hour later, he could no longer speak. His teeth fell out, his eyes sank into their sockets, and he howled on all fours at the gate of the pulpit, like a dog being beaten with a poker. None of his brothers went down to the cellars again, but it was too late. It was the 37th year of the 16th century, in the land of Baden, ravaged by the Reformation, where fires burned day and night, where wine was mixed with blood and books with ashes. Bishop Bruno von Hildenau ruled the see of St. Egidius. The old man, who was credited with burning at least 83 people for Lutheran thoughts, never raised his hand, but every decree he issued, even the quiet ones, spoken over a cup of poppy seed, broth ended in screams, smoke, and ashes sticking to his shoes. He did not eat meat on Fridays, but in his presence, children were torn apart at the altar if their mothers refused to renounce German sermons. He was one of those who believed not in mercy, but only in fear. In the fall, when he was no longer seen without a palanquin, when his forehead glistened like fat, and his voice was no louder than his breath, strange entries began to appear in the monastery books. The bishop's belly is swollen like a wineskin, and you can hear movement inside when he sleeps. The servants say that there's a smell of old cheese and blood in the chambers, even though the windows are wide open. The skin on his feet is peeling off like parchment from a candle. These were the notes of a junior physician, a student from Speyer, sent out of mercy. He begged to be allowed to treat the bishop with wormwood and grated bark, but in response, he received a reprimand and 2 slaps from the chief chaplain. By mid-October, the bishop's intestines had failed. He did not get up or speak. His pulse was counted by the bluish veins on his neck. His body gave off a heat that wilted flowers and caused plaster to fall off the walls. The doctors opened the abscesses black, cracked, and oozing a liquid resembling resin. After each bloodletting, according to ancient prescription, Bruno screamed not with his voice, but with a guttural croak, and cursed all women who had ever entered the cathedral. There is almost no evidence of this period. Some of the books were burned by the next bishop, but in one of the reports intercepted by agents of the ducal council, it is said, "The servants no longer want to enter the rooms, for there is mucus on the floor, and at night there are footsteps that cannot be explained." A doctor from Metz, summoned in December, noted that the body is covered with ulcers, from which pus oozes with an unbearable stench. The tongue is blackened, consciousness is confused. But at the same time, the monk said, he was still holding a pen. He signed a decree ordering the burning of 3 heretics 2 days before his ribs burst open, revealing internal decay. A special place in the Chronicles is given to the description of one morning when the doors of the cathedral were locked and no one came out until nightfall. At that time, according to one of the surviving canons, a man from Strasbourg came to the bishop's chambers. He carried a box of salt, an old cloth, and a book with a clasp. His name has not been preserved. He demanded that everyone leave the room. 6 hours later, a clanging sound came from behind the door, as if a vessel had been smashed. When the servants entered, they found a man with his eyes burned out, sitting in urine and blood. He whispered, "He ate, he ate, he is still eating." After that, Bruno did not even appear on a stretcher. Rumors spread that he had died. Funeral psalms were sung in the pulpit. One of the monks dared to open the side door to his room. He had disappeared. 3 days later, a man appeared in the refectory, his body stripped, his fingernails torn out, and his tongue bitten through in the middle. He did not speak, but drew on the wall an inverted cross and a rat wearing a crown. Against this backdrop, the Reformation did not stop. On the contrary, it was approaching. In the cities, images of Mary were already being torn down, images of saints were being burned, and priests were being doused with urine. The chair of St. Agatha stood like a rotting tower surrounded by a foul odor. People avoided it. Bruno was alive, according to a few witnesses, but he no longer got out of bed. Under the sheets was not a body, but a lump, purple, wet, and smelling like a rotting tooth. When someone tried to bring a candle into the room, the flame went out immediately. The last entry in one monk's diary read, "I saw rats entering his mouth and coming out of his stomach. He did not cry out. He laughed. I left. May God forgive me." In the winter of that year, the Cathedral of St. Agatha was cut off from the city. The roads, previously cleared, were abandoned, snow mixed with coal, traces of those who had fled, and crows that had gathered from all around. Local merchants stopped bringing bread. The bell ringers no longer climbed the bell tower. None of the brothers agreed to escort the coal caravans to the gates. The fear that reigned within the walls seemed contagious. The town clerk's report states, "The monastery has become like a tomb, and something moves within its walls at night. We no longer want to know who lives inside." By this time, Bishop Bruno was no longer able to rise from his bed. His head could not be turned. His neck was swollen like that of a strangled man. His lower jaw had collapsed and, according to the doctor, opened like a broken cupboard. A liquid smelling of rotten bile flowed from the wounds on his back, which had turned into round black holes. The tissues were soaked through, and there was no time to change them. His skin was cracked and covered with mold, bursting with every movement. He screamed when he tried to turn, but no longer with words, just a howl like a wounded animal. Documents stored in the archives of Worms contain copies of letters sent from the department in December, requests for replacement servants, for the delivery of new herbs for blood poison, and a special salt which is sprinkled on nameless corpses so that they do not rise. No response followed. No one wanted to enter the walls. Bruno remained in his bed, under the ceiling, where the plaster was already crumbling from moisture, where the candles did not burn, and rats lived in boxes of incense. He ordered new monks to be summoned, but no one agreed to join the chair. It was said that smoke came out of his window at night, and moans could be heard that no human being could utter. The only one who still touched his body was Brother Joachim, a mute young man who had previously worked as a cook. He was brought in by force, tied to a stretcher, and for a long time washed the bishop's wounds with salt. Once he was not found. 3 days later, while dismantling a rotten wooden wall, he was found dead, completely eaten away from his ribs to his thighs. His body was mutilated, and there was a wad of wool in his throat. The testimony states, "We thought he had cut open his stomach, but he had no fingernails, and his teeth had been pulled out." At that time, the church outside the cathedral was already condemning Bruno. He was interfering with negotiations, hindering reforms, and even Rome referred to him as a foul remnant of the old power. However, the bishop still signed decrees. In his name, an order was issued to execute 2 novice preachers who had been arrested while attempting to introduce German worship. A piece of paper, written in a trembling hand, was found in his chambers, next to a cup in which flies were swimming. The real turning point came with the appearance of a new man, part monk, part murderer, who, according to some sources, had been sent from Basel. His name is unknown, but he is described as tall, with a black cross around his neck and a bag rattling with chains. He asked to be left alone with Bruno. A few hours later, the entire upper part of the pulpit was covered with cloth. Those who entered later claimed that there was salt laid out in a circle on the floor, and in the middle was a body wrapped in black cloth that was moving. After that, Bruno showed no signs of life, but he was not buried. Over the next few weeks, scraping noises could be heard coming from the basement. Bones were found under the altar. One night, the senior monk disappeared. In the morning, an inscription was found scratched on the wall of his cell. He is not dead. He is sleeping under the pulpit. The remaining brothers began to sleep in their shoes, fully clothed, with knives under their pillows. By that time, the pulpit had been officially removed from church records. It began to be blacked out on maps. It was not mentioned in the statutes of the new church. The townspeople did not allow children to approach the gates, and those who touched the walls developed sores after a day. It was said that there was not a single living soul left inside, but every morning, someone lit a candle at the altar. The night of January 29th is marked in the monastery chronicles as white and silent. No candles were lit, the bell did not ring. The body of Bishop Bruno, left without a funeral, lay in the hall covered with a cloth. When the wind blew in through the cracks in the stained glass windows, the cloth lifted. According to reports, one of the servants committed suicide after seeing a black hand reaching out from under the cloth, as if asking who was alive. Meanwhile, in the outside world, the sea had already been abolished. According to a decree of the Spire Council, the place is contaminated with both flesh and heresy, and must be consigned to silent oblivion in the name of the purity of the community. No legate was allowed to approach. The guards left at the gates were replaced less frequently. Soon, they disappeared altogether. Only birds and rats remained. But inside, movement continued. The chronicler Gotthold, who had not left the chair by oath, wrote on scraps of cloth, hiding them under the floor. The brothers are silent. I hear someone coughing in the north wing, but there has been no one there for 2 weeks. The rats are not afraid of the light. They sleep in Bruno's tomb. He also mentioned that with each passing day, the abbot's body became heavier and heavier. The servants sent to carry him out were unable to move the stretcher. One of them burned his hands, as if there was not flesh under the cloth, but a stone heated from within. The 4 survivors began to lock the doors. They ate only dry bread and water boiled with salt. Footsteps could already be heard under the windows, although the courtyard was empty. In one of the cells, they found children's bones, small like those of a lamb. But there were no children in the monastery. One of the brothers grabbed a staff and tried to burn the body, but before he could light the fire, he cried out that it is watching and breathing through the cracks. He was found hanged in the bell tower. An archival record, made in the middle of the century, states that, in the place where Bruno lay, even after 2 generations, no grass grew, and the stone turned black. The official church does not recognize the existence of these records, but the surviving diaries of the monks of the monastery of St. Clement, located 20 versts away, confirm. The smell of rot lingered for 3 weeks. We did not sing morning mass, because we could not distinguish the echoes from the voices. In the spring, the cathedral was mentioned again, this time in a letter from the reformist priest Lutz of Koblenz, the place where the devil lived in a cassock, where the Bible was written with pus and sealed with meat. They say that rats now hold the rank of bishops there, and every night they celebrate a black mass for those who rot beneath the floor. The church condemned the letter, but soon after, men in black came for Lutz, and he was never seen again. There was no light left in the monastery. The 2 remaining brothers tried to close the crypt where Bruno had once served. One of them disappeared. The other was found with his face bitten off. The entrance to the crypt was blocked with a stone, but according to the last living witness, at night the stone sang. He escaped and made his way to the town of Weinsberg, where he died of fever. Before his death, he repeated only one thing: he's still inside, he never died. The pulpit was declared destroyed in the year 742 AD, but the bishop's body was never found. The brothers were buried separately, without names. The stone from the pulpit was taken to Rome, but returned 2 years later without explanation. Since then, it has not been shown, but rumors circulate in the church basements that the shadow of a hand remains on it, not carved or painted, but burned from the inside, as if with iron. In the spring of that year, An encrypted document signed by one of the witnesses of the pulpit was sent to the archives of Nuremberg Cathedral. It said, "We did not bury him. We tried, but the earth refused to accept him. He did not lie still. He spread out. At first, the rats hid. Now, they are leading us." The document was not published. The archivist who received it disappeared 2 weeks later. The keys to his office were found in a chalice of holy water, stained with blood. Meanwhile, a papal commission assembled in Avignon began an investigation. There was an attempt to officially declare the chair a cursed place and order its destruction. However, everyone who went to the ruins either died on the way or refused to approach, citing an inexplicable inner fear. One of the horsemen sent alone returned a day later without saying a word. He died in his sleep with a smile on his face. Priest Augustus of Ghent, one of the few who dared to write a report, recorded the following. "I saw the stone where Bruno lay. It is wet. Steam rises from it as if it were alive. There is no cross above it, but there is a mark. It looks like a circle of rat paw prints, and in the center is something that moved, although I could not see it." After that, contact with the department ceased completely. It was surrounded by a rampart, and any mention of it in sermons was forbidden. Outwardly, all was quiet, but in letters found among the papers of the deceased Bishop of Metz, it says, "We hear him. He speaks to us. He offers power in exchange for silence. He offers a relic, but asks for bodies." A few years later, strange events began to occur in the region. Priests not associated with the cathedral disappeared. Local monasteries reported rats coming out of the crypts. In the monastery of St. Mary, an inscription was found on the wall, "Give him back his flesh, and he will forgive." When the walls began to collapse from moisture, a slab with the name Bruno was found in the courtyard. It was fresh, as if carved the day before. That same year, the cathedral in Rome held a closed meeting. The result was a handwritten note signed by an unidentified cardinal. "You cannot fight what refuses to die. You can only remain silent. We will erase him. We will forget the chair. We will renounce the name, and he will go to the land where there is no language." But the memory remained. In the towns near the former cathedral, children disappeared at night. Small traces were found in houses, like mouse tracks, but arranged in the shape of prayer signs. Candles lit up by themselves. Salt turned black. Wine cellars swelled, and a liquid resembling blood flowed from the cracks. People said that Bruno was coming out again, that there was no soul in him, only decay covered with a cassock. The last official document concerning the chair is a letter from the monastery of St. Jacob, addressed to the imperial chancellor. It consists of a single line. They sing underground. No date, signature, or seal has survived. After that, all mention of them ceased. In the 44th year, after the closure of the chair, one of the last living witnesses, Brother Sebastian, was found in a hospital in Augsburg. He did not speak, eat, or pray. He only tapped his knuckles on the wall in a certain rhythm. The hospital doctor wrote 3 knocks, a pause, 4 knocks, a whisper like a call. The room smelled of mold and rotten resin, although the walls had been freshly painted. Upon opening the head, it was discovered that the brain was disintegrating like fabric, and there were traces of rodent teeth in the skull cavity. At the same time, a package of sealed sheets was found in the bishop's archives in Landau, bearing an old wax seal with the words, "The remains were covered with pus. The flesh did not decay. The rats were not afraid of fire. They came for the soul." The document was not made public. One of the cardinals who read it insisted that the papers be sealed and burned immediately. However, the list of names mentioned in the text coincided with the names of those who later disappeared under mysterious circumstances in the eastern dioceses. Meanwhile, the ruins of the cathedral became a place where beggars, the possessed, and those expelled for heresy gathered. They lived among the ruined walls, building nothing and lighting no fires. Pilgrims from nearby Baden wrote, "They eat the earth, they speak in unison, they draw paw symbols on the doors, they pray in the dark." One of the monks claimed to have seen a stone rise in the center of the former altar, and beneath it, not ashes, but darkness, with sticky breath and yellow eyes. By spring, most of those who had settled there had disappeared. Those who returned were covered with sores, their skin was peeling, and their hair was falling out. Their speech was incomprehensible. Doctors called it progressive rot of the mind. One doctor wrote in a treatise, "This is not a disease of the body, it is a disease of the memory. Those who saw the chair do not die, they decay while still alive." Rome decided to completely raze the place to the ground. A detachment of 60 men arrived, accompanied by a priest. The destruction began with the eastern wall. On the fourth night, all the horses were found dead. The priest burned himself. The remnants of the detachment were led away by force. According to the survivors, the commander said, "We will not destroy the cathedral. We will destroy ourselves." All that remained of the building was a moat, into which the rubble was thrown and covered with salt. But the salt turned black. After that, no one spoke of the cathedral. It was removed from maps. Its name was forbidden to be spoken. However, proverbs circulated among the people. Whoever saw the black altar will never be baptized, or, if they sing downstairs, don't open the door. Icons did not take root in the churches built nearby. Rats came out to the baptismal fonts. According to rumors, one baby was snatched from the arms of his godmother. The church acknowledged that the pulpit could not be purified. It was decided to remain silent. The final act, written at the end of the century, states, "Among the many who perished were burned and were erased from memory, one remained. The bishop who rejected repentance, rejected death, and was not accepted into the earth, but into decay. He did not die. He dissolved into that era. His flesh went under the stone, and his voice remained in the darkness." Thus, the last page in the Chronicle of the department is closed, not with words, but with emptiness. And since then, as recorded by the hand of the monk Gotthold, no one opens that door anymore, but from the inside, it breathes.